The deep space sensors on the Zephyrian exploration vessel Harmony's Dawn detected the signal on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Kethaval studied the readings with his 4 eyes, each one focusing on different aspects of the data streaming across his console. The third planet from a yellow star showed all the signs of intelligent life: artificial electromagnetic emissions, structured energy patterns, and the telltale signatures of industrial civilization. Another peaceful species to welcome into the fold, Kethaval said to his aide, Morwin. His translator implant converted the thought songs of his native language into audible speech. Prepare the standard first contact protocols. The Galactic Confederation had perfected these protocols over thousands of years. Every species they had encountered followed the same basic pattern. They began as warriors, evolved into thinkers, and eventually transcended physical conflict entirely. Some took longer than others, but the end result was always the same. Violence was a primitive response that intelligent beings naturally outgrew. Kethaval's species, the Zephyrians, had abandoned warfare 8,000 years ago. The Crystalline Collective had done so 12,000 years prior. Even the youngest member species of the Confederation, the mollusk philosophers, had been peaceful for at least 3 millennia. This new species would surely fit the pattern. The first approach was always careful. Kethaval's ship positioned itself at the edge of the system and began broadcasting the universal peace frequency, a mathematical sequence that demonstrated intelligence without aggression. Within days, the planet responded with their own mathematical patterns. Good, very good. The inhabitants called themselves humans and their world Earth. Their response signals showed remarkable sophistication. They understood quantum mathematics, had grasped faster-than-light communication principles, and demonstrated artistic sensibilities in their signal modulation. The musical harmonies woven into their transmissions made Kethaval's crystalline heart sing with joy. Definitely ready for contact, he told the Confederation Council during his daily report. They show all signs of advanced peaceful development. First visual contact came 3 weeks later. The humans had constructed a space station orbiting their world, a beautiful functional design that spoke of minds focused on exploration and scientific advancement. Kethaval's team was invited aboard by a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who served as the head of something called the International Space Cooperation Initiative. Dr. Chen was smaller than Kethaval had expected. Humans averaged only about 6 feet in height, with thin frames and soft-looking skin. Their hands ended in 5 delicate digits, and their faces held only 2 eyes, clearly a species that had evolved in a very safe environment. No natural weapons, no defensive armor, no threatening features at all. Welcome to humanity's home, Dr. Chen said through the translation device the humans had quickly built after learning Confederation communication standards. We're honored by your visit. The space station tour amazed Kethaval. The humans had created art galleries displaying paintings that showed landscapes, people, and abstract concepts. They had libraries filled with books, physical books, that contained stories and knowledge. Music played softly in the corridors, complex melodies that spoke of deep emotional understanding. This section shows our history, Dr. Chen explained, leading them to a wall covered with images. Kethaval saw pictures of humans working together, building cities, exploring their world. There were images of people in colorful clothing engaged in what appeared to be ceremonial dances. What are these? Morwin asked, pointing to statues of humans in various poses. Those are monuments to our greatest heroes, Dr. Chen replied. People who sacrificed for others, who showed courage in difficult times, who brought peace to conflicts. Kethaval nodded approvingly. A species that honored peacemakers and philosophers. Perfect. The cultural exchange continued for months. Human representatives visited Confederation worlds, and alien diplomats came to Earth. The humans showed remarkable adaptability, quickly learning new languages and customs. Their art translated beautifully across species. Their music could make even a stoic granite person weep with beauty. Human children particularly fascinated the alien observers. The small humans demonstrated incredible creativity, building elaborate structures from simple materials and creating complex stories during playtime. They worked together naturally, sharing resources and helping each other with tasks. Their educational development is remarkable, reported Dr. Zilantha, the Confederation's child psychology expert, after observing a human school. The young ones engage in sophisticated group activities that build cooperation and problem-solving skills. She had watched human children playing games with balls, running around in organized patterns, working in teams to achieve goals. Clearly, these were advanced cognitive development exercises designed to prepare young minds for cooperative society. The children showed natural leadership abilities, quick thinking, and excellent physical coordination. They call it sports, her human guide had explained. It teaches them about fairness, following rules, and working together. Exactly what Zilantha expected from an evolved species. Competition, but civilized competition with clear rules and peaceful resolution. The formal meetings between human leaders and Confederation representatives went smoothly. Humans expressed interest in trade, cultural exchange, and joint scientific ventures. They asked thoughtful questions about Confederation history, technology, and philosophy. "We've had our share of conflicts in the past," admitted President Martinez during one session, "but we've learned to resolve our differences through dialogue and cooperation." Kethaval appreciated the human leader's honesty. Most species had embarrassing, violent histories they preferred not to discuss. The fact that humans openly acknowledged their past while clearly having moved beyond it showed maturity. Human technology impressed everyone. They had achieved spaceflight computer systems and global communication networks. Their medical knowledge was particularly advanced. They had eliminated many diseases and extended their natural lifespan significantly. "What's most remarkable," reported Chief Science Officer Felter after reviewing human technical specifications, "is how peaceful their development has been. Their space program focuses entirely on exploration and scientific research. Their computer networks are used for education and communication. Even their transportation systems prioritize efficiency and environmental protection over speed or power." The humans did ask some unusual questions during technical exchanges. They wanted to know about Confederation defensive systems, not for any threatening reason, but out of what seemed like intellectual curiosity. They asked about the structural integrity of space stations, the redundancy of life support systems, and the response protocols for emergency situations. "Just being thorough," Dr. Chen explained when Morwin commented on the detailed questions. "We like to understand how things work completely." Kethaval found this admirable. A species that valued complete knowledge and proper preparation would make excellent Confederation members. The cultural presentations continued to delight alien observers. Humans demonstrated their martial arts, beautiful flowing movement exercises that combined physical fitness with mental discipline. They showed films of their action stories, dramatic narratives about heroes overcoming obstacles through cleverness and determination. "It's all metaphorical," Dr. Chen explained when some aliens seemed confused by the dramatic scenes. "Stories about the struggle between good and evil, the triumph of cooperation over selfishness. We use exciting imagery to make moral lessons more engaging." Of course, advanced species often used symbolism and metaphor to convey complex philosophical concepts. The mollusk philosophers did the same thing with their spiral dance ceremonies. By the end of the first year of contact, the Confederation Council unanimously approved humanity's application for preliminary membership. The vote was 847 to 0, the most enthusiastic welcome in Confederation history. "Finally," Kethaval said during the celebration, "a species that truly understands the value of peace, cooperation, and intellectual achievement. They will be a wonderful addition to our alliance." The official welcome ceremony was scheduled for the following year on Nexus Prime, the Confederation capital. Representatives from all member species would attend to greet humanity properly. It would be the greatest celebration in galactic history. None of them suspected that they had just invited apex predators to live among the sheep. The first sign that something was different came during a routine cultural observation session on Valoria Prime. Dr. Zilantha was documenting human child development when she witnessed something that made her four stomachs twist with confusion. A group of human children, aged between 6 and 10 Earth years, had been left to play in the Confederation's most advanced childhood development center. The facility was designed to encourage peaceful creativity and cooperative learning. Instead, Zilantha watched through the observation window as the human children immediately divided themselves into two groups. "What are they doing?" asked her assistant Piplet, as the children began building walls from the colorful learning blocks. The human children had constructed opposing fortifications. They were now throwing soft balls at each other, ducking behind their walls and making loud noises that sounded disturbingly like battle cries. When one child was hit by a ball, they would dramatically fall down and lie still until another child crawled over and touched them, apparently bringing them back to life. Dr. Chen's daughter, little Emma, was clearly the leader of one group. The 8-year-old girl directed her team with hand signals, sent scouts to gather intelligence on the opposing force, and even organized a flanking maneuver that would have impressed military strategists if the Confederation had any. "It's just play," Dr. Chen explained when Zilantha filed her concerned report. "Children everywhere play games like this. It's how they learn problem-solving, teamwork, and leadership skills." But Zilantha had studied child development across 847 species, and she had never seen anything like this. When Zephyrian children played, they built beautiful crystal gardens together. Mollusk children composed poetry circles. Granite children meditated in geometric patterns. None of them ever pretended to attack each other. The disturbing observations continued across multiple worlds. On Harmony Station, human teenagers had organized something called a laser tag tournament. Zilantha arrived expecting to see a light-based art exhibition. Instead, she found human youth dressed in dark clothing, carrying sophisticated light beam devices, hunting each other through a maze of obstacles. "Target acquired," whispered Jake Morrison, a 14-year-old boy as he crept through the shadows. His movements were fluid, purposeful, predatory. He communicated with his team using subtle hand gestures, coordinated their advance, and struck his opponents with precision that took their breath away. The game ended with Jake's team achieving complete victory over their opponents. But instead of anger or sadness, the losing team congratulated the winners and immediately began analyzing what went wrong, discussing better tactics for the next round. "They're learning," Zilantha murmured to herself. "They're actually learning how to hunt more effectively." The adult humans were equally puzzling. Ambassador Chen invited Confederation representatives to observe a friendly sports exhibition on Earth. Kethaval expected to see the equivalent of Zephyrian crystal singing, competitions, or mollusk philosophical debates. Instead, he watched 22 humans chase a single ball across a large field, using only their feet. They collided with each other, fought for control of the ball, and celebrated when they managed to kick it into a specific target area. The crowd of watching humans screamed encouragement, sang songs, and displayed emotional investment that bordered on religious fervor. "Football," Dr. Chen explained, "one of our most popular sports. But why do they fight over the ball?" Kethaval asked. "Why not simply take turns?" Dr. Chen looked confused. "Because then it wouldn't be competition. The challenge is what makes it fun. Competition." The word sent chills through Kethaval's crystalline spine. Competition was something primitive species engaged in before they learned to cooperate. But humans seemed to love it. The demonstrations continued, each more bewildering than the last. Humans showed them boxing, two individuals hitting each other with padded fists until one could not continue. They demonstrated wrestling, physical contest where opponents tried to force each other to the ground. They even had something called martial arts where people practiced ways to disable opponents using nothing but their bodies. "It's about discipline and self-improvement," insisted Master Liu, an elderly human who taught something called karate. "We learn to control our bodies and minds, to overcome challenges, to never give up." But to Confederation observers, it looked like humans were training for combat. Every movement was precise, powerful, potentially lethal. When Master Liu demonstrated breaking wooden boards with his bare hands, several alien diplomats fainted. The most disturbing discovery came when human families began arriving on Confederation worlds for extended cultural exchanges. Confederation child psychologists expected to see peaceful, cooperative family dynamics. Instead, they observed something they had no framework to understand. Human siblings engaged in constant low-level competition. Brothers and sisters raced each other to complete tasks, argued over resources, formed temporary alliances against parents, and maintained complex social hierarchies that shifted daily. Parents didn't discourage this behavior. They encouraged it. "Healthy competition builds character," explained Mrs. Thompson. When Zilantha questioned why she allowed her 3 children to compete for everything from dessert privileges to television viewing choices, it teaches them that they have to work for what they want. Zilantha watched 10-year-old Tommy Thompson systematically outmaneuver his siblings to secure the best seat for movie night. The boy had formed an alliance with his sister against his brother, promised future favors in exchange for present support, and executed a strategy that was both ruthless and brilliant. This child shows natural tactical thinking, Zilantha wrote in her report. He assesses threats, identifies opportunities, manipulates allies, and achieves objectives through calculated action. These are not learned behaviors. They appear to be instinctive. The reports began accumulating on the Confederation Council's databases. Human children who played war games with sophisticated strategy. Human teenagers who competed in activities that looked suspiciously like combat training. Human adults who watched other humans fight for entertainment. Most disturbing of all were the human stories. Confederation linguists finally gained access to human literature, films, and historical records. They discovered that human culture was filled with narratives about conflict, struggle, and victory over enemies. Their most beloved stories are about wars, reported Chief Linguist Mortal during an emergency briefing. They have thousands of years of literature celebrating warriors, battles, and military conquest. Their heroes are soldiers. Their greatest achievements are victories. Their most honored virtues are courage in combat. The evidence painted a picture that made no sense to Confederation minds. Humans appeared to be an advanced, peaceful species. They had achieved spaceflight, complex technology, and sophisticated art. They spoke eloquently about cooperation, diplomacy, and harmony. But underneath the civilized surface, they remained competitive, aggressive, and fascinated by conflict. Even their attempts at peaceful activities contained elements of struggle and contest. Perhaps it's just cultural residue, suggested Council Member Velshan during an emergency session. Many species retain symbolic references to their primitive past. Surely they've evolved beyond actual violence. But private reports from human-alien interaction specialists told a different story. When faced with problems, humans instinctively looked for ways to overcome obstacles through force or clever maneuvering. When given challenges, they immediately began strategizing about how to defeat opponents. When working in groups, they naturally formed command hierarchies and tactical divisions. Dr. Zilantha's final report was the most disturbing of all. After 6 months of careful observation, she had reached an unprecedented conclusion. Humans appear to be a species that has achieved technological advancement without abandoning their predatory instincts, she wrote. Unlike every other Confederation member species, they have not evolved past their competitive phase. Instead, they have channeled their aggressive tendencies into structured activities that maintain their combat readiness while allowing for social cooperation. Most troubling of all, the report continued, human children are not being trained to be peaceful citizens. They are being trained to be effective warriors who happen to live in peaceful times. The Confederation Council read the reports with growing alarm, but by then it was too late to change course. Humans had already been granted preliminary membership. They had access to Confederation technology, maps of member worlds, and detailed information about every species in the Alliance. For the first time in galactic history, the Confederation had welcomed a species of warriors into their midst, and none of them had realized it until the warriors were already inside their walls. The truth began to emerge on an archaeological dig on Kepler 442b, humanity's first colony, world outside their home system. Dr. Yilvan of the Confederation Archaeological Institute had volunteered to lead a joint human-alien expedition to study early colonial development patterns. She expected to find evidence of peaceful settlement, cooperative building, and the gradual development of civilization. Instead, she found battlefields. These aren't construction sites, she told her human counterpart, Dr. James Rodriguez, as they stood over carefully excavated trenches. These are defensive positions. The evidence was undeniable. The early human colonists had built their settlements like fortresses. Every building had clear fields of fire. Every neighborhood had choke points and killing zones. The colony's water supply had been positioned to make poisoning impossible. Food storage areas were distributed and hidden to prevent total loss during siege conditions. Dr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Well, you have to understand the early colonial period was dangerous. We didn't know what we might encounter out here. But Yilvin's trained eye saw something else entirely. These weren't the hasty defensive measures of frightened civilians. These were the calculated preparations of experienced warriors. Someone had designed this colony to survive military assault from the moment the first foundation was laid. Dr. Rodriguez, she said carefully, what exactly were you expecting to encounter that required this level of military preparation? The human scientist's pause lasted too long. You never know, he finally said. It's always better to be ready for anything. As the dig continued, more disturbing evidence emerged. The colonists had manufactured weapons, not tools that could be used as weapons, but devices designed specifically for killing. They had built training facilities where colonists practiced combat techniques. They had established communication networks designed to coordinate defensive responses across the entire planet. Most shocking of all, they had done this while simultaneously creating schools, hospitals, art galleries, and research facilities. The humans had built a peaceful civilization and a military stronghold in the same place at the same time, as if the two concepts were naturally compatible. Yilvin's report triggered an emergency review of all human historical data. Confederation linguists who had previously focused on human philosophy and art began examining human history with new understanding. What they found changed everything. Council members, Chief Linguist Mortal addressed the emergency session via hologram from Earth's archives. We have fundamentally misunderstood human development. The presentation began with images that previous analysts had dismissed as symbolic art. Now, with proper context, they revealed themselves as documentary evidence of continuous warfare spanning human history. These are not metaphorical representations, Mortal explained, displaying images of armored humans carrying metal weapons. These are historical records of actual military conflicts. Humans have been engaged in organized warfare for their entire recorded history. The scale was staggering. Humans had fought wars involving millions of participants. They had developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They had created military strategies so sophisticated that Confederation computer simulations couldn't adequately model them. But they've moved beyond all that, protested Council Member Velshan. They're a peaceful spacefaring civilization now. Mortal's expression showed the sort of patience usually reserved for very young children. Council Member, humans achieved spaceflight while actively fighting wars. They developed their most advanced technologies during military conflicts. They reached their current level of civilization not despite their warfare, but because of it. The evidence was overwhelming. Human space technology had been developed by competing military organizations. Their computer systems had been designed for code breaking and strategic analysis. Their materials science had been driven by the need for better armor and weapons. Even their medical advances had come from treating combat injuries and chemical weapons exposure. They never stopped fighting, Mortal continued. They just got better at controlling when and how they fight. Dr. Zil-Antha's supplementary report made the situation even clearer. Human psychology is fundamentally different from any species we've encountered, she explained. They don't see conflict and cooperation as opposites. They see them as complementary aspects of the same social system. She displayed video of human military units in training. Watch how they work together. Perfect coordination, absolute trust, willingness to sacrifice for teammates. This is the highest form of cooperation any species has achieved. But it's cooperation designed to defeat enemies. The recordings showed humans moving through complex scenarios with precision that made Confederation observers gasp. Teams of humans communicated through subtle signals, anticipated each other's actions, and executed coordinated plans with the efficiency that bordered on telepathy. They've weaponized cooperation itself, Zil-Antha concluded. Humans work together better than any species in the Confederation, but they've developed that skill specifically to destroy their opponents. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Every human interaction they had witnessed took on new meaning. The children's games were tactical training exercises. The sports competitions were combat simulations. The cultural activities were team-building exercises designed to create loyalty and coordination. Even worse, the humans had been studying Confederation worlds and technologies. With military eyes, Dr. Chen's innocent questions about defensive systems and emergency protocols weren't academic curiosity. They were intelligence gathering. Have they been planning to attack us? Asked Council Member Thylon, her bioluminescent patches flickering with anxiety. Unknown, replied Mortal, but they've certainly been analyzing our vulnerabilities. Every human who has visited a Confederation world has asked detailed questions about our security systems, resource distribution, and population centers. Ambassador Kethval, who had led the first contact mission, felt his crystalline structure vibrating with shame. How had he missed the signs? How had an entire civilization of trained observers failed to recognize predators among them? The answer, he realized, was that humans were unlike any predators the galaxy had seen before. They were social predators who had learned to cooperate with their own kind while maintaining their ability to destroy outsiders. They were intelligent predators who could discuss philosophy and poetry while mentally calculating the best way to eliminate threats. Most dangerous of all, they were patient predators who could live peacefully for generations until circumstances required them to reveal their true nature. What do we do? Asked the council leader, her ancient voice heavy with worry. The options were limited. Humans were already integrated into dozens of Confederation systems. They had access to advanced technology, detailed intelligence about every member species, and the trust of billions of peaceful aliens. Most human colonies were located near major trade routes and strategic resources. We could ask them to leave, suggested Council Member Velshan. With what leverage? Mortal responded. They're already here. They have our technology. They know our weaknesses. If we try to force them out, they have every advantage. Could we contain them? Asked another council member. Zilantha's laugh had no humor in it. Council member, we couldn't contain human children. Their 8-year-olds show better tactical thinking than our adult security specialists. How exactly would we contain their military forces? The terrible truth settled over the council chamber like a dark cloud. The Confederation had spent thousands of years creating a perfect, peaceful civilization. They had eliminated conflict, transcended competition, and achieved harmony among hundreds of species. And now they had handed all of it to a species of warriors who had never stopped preparing for war. The emergency session lasted 3 days. In the end, they reached the only decision possible. They would have to test humanity's intentions directly. If humans truly meant no harm, they would respond to a crisis as any peaceful species would, with calls for help and cooperation. If they responded as warriors, the Confederation would know that their worst fears were justified. The test was scheduled for the following month. None of the council members slept well during those weeks, knowing that they were about to discover whether they had welcomed friends or predators into their home. They suspected they already knew the answer. The test began at 800 hours Confederation Standard Time on Research Station Omega-7. The facility orbited a gas giant in the neutral zone, far from any inhabited worlds. Officially, it was a joint xenobiology laboratory where human and alien scientists studied deep space organisms. Unofficially, it had been chosen as the perfect place to observe human behavior under crisis conditions. Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing genetic sequences from a new species of spaceborne algae when the alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the station as automated systems announced, "Alert, alert, hostile vessels detected. Station under attack. All personnel to emergency stations." Through the observation post hidden in the station's communication array, Ambassador Kethval and the Confederation test team watched Dr. Chen's reaction. They expected to see fear, confusion, calls for help, the normal response of any peaceful species to sudden violence. Instead, Dr. Chen's transformation was immediate and terrifying. The mild-mannered xenobiologist disappeared. In her place stood someone who moved with predatory grace, her eyes scanning the room for weapons and tactical positions. She touched her communication device with practiced efficiency. "Chen to all stations. Sound off. Give me a sit rep on all sectors." The responses came back in crisp, professional tones that made Kethval's crystalline structure vibrate with alarm. The humans weren't panicking. They were organizing, engineering secure, reactor stable, defensive systems coming online, medical bay locked down, emergency surgical suite prepared for casualties, hydroponics sealed, food stores protected, recreation deck teams moving to defensive positions. Recreation deck teams? Kethval watched in amazement, as the humans who had been playing table tennis 10 minutes earlier were now coordinating. overlapping fields of fire using improvised weapons. Dr. Chen had taken control of the station's main operations center. Around her, humans who had been peaceful researchers moments before now worked with the efficiency of a military unit. They didn't need to discuss who was in charge. They naturally deferred to Chen's authority as if they had trained together for years. "Jackson, I need a tactical analysis of the attacking vessels," Chen ordered. "Martinez, get me a full inventory of everything on this station that can be weaponized. Thompson, establish secure communication with all Confederation emergency services. Dr. Jackson, a marine biologist who studied peaceful filter-feeding organisms, began analyzing the holographic attackers with the eye of a military strategist. 3 vessels, unknown configuration. They're maintaining distance and using energy weapons, probably testing our defenses before committing to full assault. How did a marine biologist know military tactics?" Martinez, a geologist who specialized in crystal formations, was rapidly cataloging the station's resources. "We've got industrial lasers in the mining section, chemical supplies that can be used for explosives, and the fabrication units can produce metal projectiles. Give me 20 minutes and I can turn this science station into a fortress." How did a geologist know how to make weapons? But the most shocking transformation was in Dr. Chen herself. The woman who had spent months discussing poetry and philosophy with Confederation representatives was now displaying strategic thinking that surpassed anything in their databases. "The attackers are maintaining a standard siege formation," she announced, studying the tactical display. "They expect us to wait for rescue or attempt to negotiate. Instead, we're going to disable their weapons, capture their intelligence, and use their own technology against them." "Ma'am," said Thompson from the communication station, "I'm getting no response from Confederation emergency services." "We're on our own." Chen's smile was predatory. "Good. That means we don't have to worry about collateral damage." What followed was a masterclass in human military thinking. Chen divided the station's personnel into teams with specific objectives. Some groups focused on defense, others on intelligence gathering, still others on offensive preparations. Every human, regardless of their official job, seemed to understand their role in the larger strategy. The janitor, a quiet man named Rodriguez who had spent his time fixing ventilation systems, revealed an encyclopedic knowledge of the station's infrastructure. He quickly identified which systems were critical, which could be sacrificed, and how to reroute power and resources for maximum defensive advantage. "If we shut down the laboratory sections and redirect power to the shield generators, we can increase defensive capacity by 40%, he reported. "I can also seal the main corridors here and here to create choke points." The children were the most disturbing element. Human families had been permitted to live on the station as part of the cultural exchange program. Kethaval expected the adults to focus on protecting their young ones. Instead, the children became part of the defensive effort. 8-year-old Emma Chen helped her mother coordinate communications, using her small size to crawl through maintenance shafts and establish backup communication lines. 12-year-old Jake Martinez worked with his father to identify useful materials, his young mind contributing ideas that hadn't occurred to the adults. "The holographic projectors in the recreation center can be modified to create false targets," Jake suggested. "If we coordinate them with the mining lasers, we can make the attackers think we have weapons in positions where we don't." These were children. Human children were contributing to military strategy. Within 2 hours, the humans had transformed the peaceful research station into something that made Confederation military analysts break out in cold sweats. They had created overlapping defensive positions, established multiple fallback points, and prepared offensive capabilities that exceeded those of most Confederation security forces. But the truly terrifying moment came when the attackers, closed in for their final assault. Dr. Chen stood in the command center, watching the approaching vessels with calm satisfaction. "Initiate Operation Mousetrap," she ordered. The humans had turned the entire confrontation into an ambush. While appearing to defend desperately, they had actually been herding the attacking vessels into a carefully prepared kill zone. Industrial lasers suddenly revealed themselves in positions the attackers hadn't suspected. Makeshift missiles launched from concealed positions. The station's own defensive systems, enhanced by human modifications, created a crossfire that no ship could survive. But Dr. Chen wasn't satisfied with simply defeating the attackers. As the disabled vessels drifted helplessly, She ordered boarding teams to capture them intact. "Full intelligence sweep," she commanded. "I want to know everything about their technology, their tactics, and whoever sent them. No detail is too small." The boarding teams consisted of xenobiologists and geologists who moved through the disabled ships like professional soldiers. They secured the vessels, gathered intelligence, and even began reverse engineering the alien technology for their own use. In 4 hours, the humans had gone from peaceful researchers to an efficient military force that had not only defeated their attackers but had turned the entire encounter into an intelligence-gathering operation. Kethaval and his observation team watched in stunned silence as the humans celebrated their victory. They weren't celebrating survival. They were celebrating a successful hunt. "Outstanding work, everyone," Dr. Chen announced over the station's communication system. "We've secured valuable intelligence, captured advanced technology, and demonstrated that this station can defend itself against any threat. Engineering teams begin integration of the captured systems. Science teams start analysis of the alien technology. Security teams prepare for possible retaliation." The humans were already planning for the next battle. The observation team's emergency report reached the Confederation Council within hours. The implications were catastrophic. Humans hadn't just passed the test. They had revealed capabilities that no Confederation force could match. They turned a research station into a military stronghold in 2 hours, Kethaval reported. Every human, including the children, demonstrated tactical knowledge and strategic thinking. They didn't just defend. They attacked, captured, and began studying their opponents for future encounters. "But it was just a simulation," protested Council Member Velshan. "They were fighting holographic projections and automated drones." "Council Member?" Kethaval replied, his voice heavy with dread. "They didn't know it was a simulation. As far as they knew, they were fighting for their lives. And they enjoyed it." The council chamber fell silent as the truth settled over them. They had tested humanity to determine if humans were a threat. The test had proven that humans were not just a threat. They were the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. And they had been living peacefully among the Confederation's worlds for over a year, studying every weakness, analyzing every vulnerability, and preparing for conflicts that the Confederation couldn't even imagine. The test had answered their question. Unfortunately, the answer was exactly what they had feared most. 3 weeks later, long-range sensors detected something approaching from the dark space beyond the galactic rim. Something that had destroyed civilizations before the Confederation existed. Something the Confederation had hoped would never return. The Devourers were coming home. The first Confederation worlds died in silence. The Devourer fleet emerged from dark space like a plague of mechanical locusts, their black ships absorbing light and hope in equal measure. They struck the outer rim colonies without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Entire civilizations that had existed for millennia simply vanished from galactic communication networks. Ambassador Kethaval stood in the Confederation's Strategic Command Center on Nexus Prime, watching the tactical displays update with growing horror. Red zones spread across the galactic map like a disease, marking worlds that no longer responded to communication. Attempts: Verdani Prime, no response. Crystalline, Collective Homeworld, no response. New, Zephyr, no response. Each announcement represented billions of lives extinguished. Species that had contributed art, philosophy, and knowledge to the Confederation for thousands of years were being erased from existence. "Where are our defense fleets?" demanded Council Leader Morthus, her bioluminescent patches flickering with panic. General Velkar, the Confederation's senior military advisor, looked physically ill. "Council Leader, our ships are designed for exploration and peacekeeping. They carry defensive shields and non-lethal restraint systems. The Devourers are using weapons that convert matter directly into energy. Our ships are being vaporized on contact." The strategic display showed the pathetic results of Confederation military response. Beautiful exploration vessels with their elegant curves and transparent aluminum observation decks were engaging machines of war that had been perfected over eons of conquest. "The battles lasted mere minutes. How long before they reached the core worlds?" Morthus asked. "At their current rate of advance, 6 months, Velkar replied. "But that assumes they maintain their current pace. If they accelerate their assault, possibly 3 months. The council chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Some members advocated immediate evacuation to distant galaxies. Others suggested attempting diplomatic contact. A few proposed surrendering and hoping for mercy. Kethaval watched the chaos with growing desperation. The Confederation had spent millennia perfecting the art of peace. They had created a civilization where conflict was resolved through dialogue, where resources were shared freely, where every being could pursue knowledge and beauty without fear. But they had forgotten that some problems couldn't be solved with words. What about the humans? The question came from Dr. Zil Antha, who had been silently studying her datapad. We've established that they're militarily capable. Could they help? The chamber fell silent. Every council member remembered the reports. From Research Station Omega-7, the species they had feared might be a threat to the Confederation had just become their only hope for survival. Contact Dr. Chen immediately, ordered Morthus. Request an emergency meeting. The human response came within hours. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived on Nexus Prime aboard a ship that made Confederation observers nervous. It looked like the peaceful exploration vessels they were familiar with, but subtle differences suggested hidden capabilities. The hull was thicker. The engine configuration was more robust. The sensor arrays were more sophisticated. Council leader, Dr. Chen said as she entered the chamber. Her demeanor was calm, professional, and somehow reassuring in a way that made Kethaval realize how much he had missed human confidence. We've been monitoring the situation. We're here to help. Dr. Chen, Morthus replied. We need to discuss military options. We understand that humanity has certain capabilities in this area. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but Kethaval thought he detected a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Yes, we do. We've been preparing. Preparing? Velkar leaned forward. For how long? Since the day we learned about the Devourers from your historical archives, Dr. Chen replied calmly. We've been analyzing the threat and developing response strategies. The silence that followed was deafening. The humans had been secretly preparing for war, while living peacefully among the Confederation's worlds. They had known this day would come and had been getting ready for it. What do you need from us? Morthus asked. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of Confederation technology. Industrial capacity, raw materials, and cooperation. We have the strategies and tactics to defeat the Devourers, but we need your infrastructure to build the tools for the job. The plans were staggering in their scope and sophistication. The humans had analyzed every aspect of Confederation technology and found ways to weaponize it. Mining lasers became ship-killing weapons. Cargo transporters became missile delivery systems. Communication networks became tactical coordination grids. You've turned our entire civilization into a weapons factory, Velkar whispered. Not turned into, Dr. Chen corrected. Revealed what it always could be. Every Confederation world has the infrastructure to become a military production center. Every ship can be converted for combat operations. Every citizen can contribute to the war effort. The transformation began immediately. Dr. Chen, now Admiral Chen, established operational headquarters on Nexus Prime and began implementing what she called Operation Shepherd. Human technical advisors spread throughout Confederation space, working with local officials to convert peaceful installations into military assets. The changes were remarkable. Crystalline collective worlds began producing advanced targeting computers using their natural mathematical processing abilities. Mollusk philosopher colonies used their chemical expertise to develop new explosive compounds. Even the peaceful granite people contributed by creating ultra-dense armor plating. But the most dramatic changes occurred in human settlements. The colonies that Confederation archaeologists had identified as militarized were revealed to be just the beginning. Hidden factories began producing weapons of unprecedented sophistication. Training facilities that had been disguised as recreational centers started graduating military specialists. Human children, who had been playing games for over a year, seamlessly transitioned into support roles. They understood communication protocols, logistics management, and tactical coordination because they had been learning these skills disguised as entertainment. The first major engagement came at the Battle of Harmony's End, where Admiral Chen personally led a combined fleet against a Devourer advance force. Kethaval watched the battle from the command center, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. The Confederation ships, redesigned with human modifications, moved in perfect coordination. What had once been exploration vessels were now predators stalking mechanical prey. They used tactics that no Confederation military academy had ever taught: deception, ambush, coordinated strikes that exploited enemy weaknesses. But it was Admiral Chen's strategy that truly impressed. She didn't just fight the Devourers, she anticipated their moves, manipulated their responses, and turned their own tactics against them. The battle became a chess game played by a master against opponents who had never learned the rules. How is she doing that? Felkar asked as they watched human forces systematically dismantle a Devourer formation that should have been unstoppable. She's thinking like they think, replied Dr. Zilantha. Humans understand war in ways we never could. They don't just know how to fight, they know how to think about fighting. The victory at Harmony's End was just the beginning. Admiral Chen launched a campaign that pushed the Devourers back system by system. She used hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their supply lines, psychological warfare to confuse their coordination, and strategic deception to make them fight battles on her terms rather than theirs. The Confederation watched in amazement, as their peaceful civilization was transformed into a military machine more effective than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not because they had become warriors, but because they had learned to support warriors who had never stopped preparing for this moment. The final battle took place in the deep space where the Devourers had first emerged. Admiral Chen led a massive fleet comprising ships from every Confederation world, each vessel modified with human military innovations, crewed by beings who had learned to fight alongside humanity's children. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Devourer threat had been eliminated not just tactically but strategically. Admiral Chen's forces hadn't just defeated the invasion. They had captured Devourer technology, traced their supply networks, and eliminated their ability to threaten anyone ever again. In the aftermath, as the Confederation struggled to process what had happened, Admiral Chen stood before the Council one final time. "Council leader," she said, "the threat has been eliminated. The Confederation is safe." "Admiral," Morthus replied, "we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But we have to ask, what happens now? Will humanity continue to prepare for war?" Admiral Chen's smile was gentle but unmistakable. "Council leader, we never stopped being human. We love peace, we create art, we explore the universe with wonder and curiosity, but we also remember that peace is something worth fighting for." She gestured toward the viewport where Confederation ships were returning to their homeworlds. "Your civilization is beautiful and precious. Someone needs to be ready to protect it when beauty and peace aren't enough."